Everyone, it's Candy. I'm going to start by reading my disclaimer. I'm not a licensed realtor, lawyer, accountant, mortgage broker, or financial advisor. This coaching program is meant to be educational only. Everything that I teach comes from decades of personal experience, not hearsay or something I've learned from somewhere else. I openly and honestly disclose what I find works and what I found hasn't worked regarding mortgages, debt, and real estate investing, and that I find are financially destroying a lot of people who don't know about them. By being here, you agree that I'm not advising you, but only educating you. And you also agree that I own the intellectual rights to the materials that I provide, both in video and in print. And therefore you agree not to share or publish these materials without my written consent. You also know I'm recording these meetings and you'll be provided a link to the recording. Okay, we'll start in a few seconds. Hey, David. Good to have you here. All right. Hey, everyone. Nice to see everybody. Lindsay, hi. Trudy, hi. Mike.
Hey, Mark, Susan. This is awesome.
Yeah. How's everyone?
Lindsay?
Good.
Awesome.
Awesome. Cindy Lee's
doing
right
well,
now.
Candy,
Carter,
Doing
hey,
good.
Carter, I've got yours here today. I'm not going to say which one it was. Did you want to share it tonight? The question that you had, because you weren't here last week when I was going to share.
Yes, please, Candy.
Are you okay if I say it's yours?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
We can all learn from it, and everybody's got little skeletons in their closet and dirty laundry, but let's get it all out in the open, because that's the way that we can
I say
deal
that all the time. That's hilarious. All right.
Carter, you're brave. It's too soon for me.
Okay, let me just make sure that I've got all of
Hi,
this.
Candy.
Hi, sweetheart. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Sorry, I didn't give you eye contact. I was just bringing up Carter's property listing. So I haven't looked through all this ahead of time. I typically don't, so that I'm just as fresh-eyed with everything as you guys will be. So it makes it a little bit more fun. I'm kind of like on the hot seat that way, and I like it.
I'm still a doe in the headlights when it comes to this, so.
Well, that's okay. We'll be a doe in the headlight together. Because I haven't seen your deal. I haven't read it. I just printed it off and I was going to share it. But because you weren't there, I didn't know how to bring it all together because I couldn't ask questions and I didn't have your permission to just do it. So
Well, now you have my ultimate permission, and let's go for it.
all right. So let's start with that. And Jamie, I saw that you called today. I haven't stopped at all today. I haven't even read your text or email. I'm so sorry. It's been one of those days where I've been pulled in a million different directions. So it's been fun, exciting, strange day. Okay.
Is it still hot out there, Candy?
You know what? It was really cold this morning. I was wearing a hoodie and leggings, and then it got really, really warm, and now it's like really hot.
Oh, wow.
Really humid?
It's not humid. I wouldn't say humid. Like, I mean, I grew up in Ontario, so to me, that's humid,
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
right?
Fair enough.
BC, I think it definitely is more humid than Calgary, but it's. I'm going to Calgary. Well, in the middle of the night. I'm leaving here right after class. I'm going to bed, getting up at 3:30 in the morning. So you know what? Half an hour earlier than normal. I'm hitting the road to go to Calgary tomorrow. So, anyways. Going to go see my son. Anyway, kind of
Nice.
Also, just some news so that everybody knows, just before I forget, because I tend to do that when I get going here. Tomorrow is the debt reduction night. I will be doing it from Calgary, so I'm not going to have my normal backdrop. I'll be at my son's house. So we're talking a 24-year-old's place. It's not fancy. I'll probably be against a plain white wall, just so you know. The cleanest spot I can find in the house. And we'll go from there. So Friday, I am going to be running around all the time that I'm there, so I won't be doing that special night Friday night. I was going to do something just talking in general about the program and about what it is that you guys actually have your hands on, and basically ethical investing versus what some of the stuff is that's going on out there. I'm going to move that to probably Tuesday, as far as I know. That's what I'm looking at. It's just that something came up out of the blue with my son and it was last minute. So I'm heading out there to be mom and rescue the scenario. So
Family first.
family first, right? So
That's right. Yeah.
and Friday was an extra thing, and I haven't really announced anything except for to you guys. So just to let you know, if you had thought of somebody that you were wanting to bring, it is going to probably be Tuesday. So just watch for the Facebook group. I will announce it when I have a definitive decision. Thank goodness I didn't announce it yet anywhere else, but to you guys. So I'm going to use my right to change my mind.
So is what you're saying, Candy, that their Friday night is off the books until Tuesday now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Thanks for clarifying, MJ. Yep.
No problem.
Yeah.
Just
Because I
wanted to
just,
make sure.
I don't want to be doing it at my son's place, and his wife is
Yeah.
supposed to be coming home Friday night, and the people coming in and out, and it's just like,
Totally understandable. I just wanted to clarify.
perfect. Good. I prefer to be here when I've got the right lighting and everything. I don't even know what kind of lighting I'm going to have tomorrow, just so you guys know. It might be like, where is she? Silhouette, something like that. We'll see how it goes. But I will be here with lots of information for you, though. All righty. Okay, so tonight we have questions from Michael. So we'll go through that. And then we have Carter's got a deal that we're going to share. And then there was questions from Tim. So, and I don't know who wants me to say what, so I'm not going to say whose questions were from who. I'm just going to keep it neutral and go from there. All right. So first one is, and if I've missed anybody, you guys can just, you can ask your questions live. Obviously, you don't have to just wait to email them in. You can ask questions here as well, as long as we get the chance to go through everything. Let me just brighten this up a bit. I feel like I'm a little dark there. How is that? A little better? Okay. We get the weird light at this time of day. It starts to get dark and then my lights change as we go. So, all right. So this first one is Carter. So I'll just read it, what he's got here, and we'll go through it. So he says, good afternoon, Candy. Main event, I'm selling my house and we intend to move onto a property and share it with our son and his family. This house is on 0.83 acres of and has a nice large space in the backyard for a modular home, which is what we would occupy once we have it built. We spend 6 months in Panama. Nice. And this would be the optimum situation, as our son and his family will occupy the large house year round and check in on our modular during the time we're south. This home is owner occupied. Your home is owner occupied right now. It's yours.
No, well, our home is owner occupied, but it's going to be up for sale. The house that we're looking at on Falcon Ridge is also owner occupied as well.
Okay, Falcon Ridge, as in the modular.
No, sorry. Falcon Ridge is the big, huge 5-bedroom, 4-bathroom house that our son, John, and his family will occupy.
Okay, so you guys don't own this house yet.
No,
Okay, so you're selling your house and you're looking at this 0.83 acre property.
correct.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. So it is owner occupied at the moment. And if we could do the fishing formula, then this would be the ideal situation. I'm including a scan of the listing. I get it. Okay. All right. I thought you were saying that there was a listing for selling your house and you were wondering how to fish it. So there's two things going on here. That basically we've got you being able to buy the other property by fishing and selling your property maybe by fishing. Is that correct? Okay.
That would be the ideal, yes.
Okay. So when it comes to your own home, are you clear title on your house?
Not by a long shot.
Not by a long shot. Okay. So what interest rate do you have? Let me just get some paper here so I can take notes as we go as well.
It's kind of a convoluted and complex thing. I have a HELOC on this with 3.5% interest.
3.5% interest. Okay.
Yes.
And
Balance?
what loan to value rate is it?
That I'm not sure.
Not sure. Okay. Do you know what the value of the property is? Your property?
630.
Okay. And how much is owing on the line of credit or the HELOC?
385.
385. And those of you who don't know, HELOC stands for Home Equity Line of Credit. Okay. So you've got, and is there anything else registered against it?
Nothing.
No, okay, so you're a little over 50% financed. Okay.
That's with Manulife One.
Yeah, I was just wondering about that.
Yeah.
Okay, and for those of you who don't know, Manulife One actually is very close to, there's other companies that are similar. One in particular that I do like better than Manulife, but I don't typically promote anybody. But it's not a bad thing. The thing with Manulife though, you have to watch how your accounts are set up. For those of you who don't know, it's a company that allows you to have what's called a home equity line of credit. They typically go to 60% loan to value on the line of credit side. And then sometimes there'll be if your financing is greater than that, then there'll be like a mortgage, like a hard mortgage portion. So they can separate the different types of loans, and you can have sub accounts with them. So how it works with them is your paycheck, similar to what I teach you, is your paycheck goes into the account with Manulife. All the bills come out of it, but they don't teach you to bring the bills to the end of the payment period. So the interest that's charged is less, but all your bills go in, all of your money goes into the account, which knocks down the mortgage. And then as you spend your money, it gets put back onto the line of credit. So similar to a credit card concept, right? Just so you're aware, you don't have the same flexibility of having a balance transfer at 0% or anything else like that though. And it is a little bit easier to overspend your paycheck because of the fact that you're building your equity in your home, and that equity is readily available to you. So for those of you who are not super diligent in knowing how to not cross the line and start using your equity as an ATM, it can be a dangerous scenario. If you're super, super diligent, it could be an option. Okay. But again, you have to play around with that 0% thing. And I'm not going to get into that right now. But I just want to explain for those of you who have not heard of a Manulife One mortgage, that's what this is. So anyway, so Carter has, if I take, let's see here, 385 and we divide that by 630. So you're at 61%. Okay. All right. So with that, okay, so what are your, let me just play with this for a second here. So 385 would be loan, and then I would push loan amount. I would put 3.5% then interest. Now, is there an amortization on this, or is it open?
It is open.
It's open. So what do they base the number of payments on? Like the actual, well, I guess it's just going to be straight up because it's only a line of credit. So what are your payments based on as far as principal and interest then? Are they doing it straight simple interest, or?
It's straight simple interest.
It is simple, so it's not amortized at all. So 385, so times 0.035 divided by 12. Well, I can't, well, okay, so that's, yeah, it is. So it's 1122.92 a month. Is what is the minimum required amount that would be paid just in interest. And then anything over above that would go towards your principal. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, so you guys, that's how I calculated it. I'll do it one more time. I took the balance that he is owing, because it's always going to be based on the current balance, and they would be calculating it monthly, wouldn't they?
Yes, they do.
Okay, it's not daily.
Not sure on that.
Yeah, because the reason I'm asking that is, and this is just information for everybody to know and to think about as well, is the thing you want to know. Credit cards are calculated daily, right? That interest is whatever is left owing at the end of the day is what the interest is charged for the following day. Okay, so that's how they calculate the interest. Kind of like on that example that I sent you, you can see that the interest each day that's charged on the balance for that day. Okay. When you go back and you look at week 2 on that credit card example. So on this, the reason I wanted to know if it's calculated daily or monthly is a general line of credit is calculated monthly. The interest is calculated on the monthly balance. And that's nice because you can play with that month. Like you can make a payment just before the calculation date on a line of credit, before they make their the calculation on it. And that means you can use it, and you can use it as long as you put a big chunk of payment into it just before they calculate the interest. You can pay the payment down, lower the interest that would be owed, right? Because you're making a chunk payment. But on a home equity line of credit, if it is daily interest, then you want to try and have most of your expenses come out near the end of the payment period. If it is monthly, then you want to have your paycheck and all of your bills put in just before, like you want to have all your bills paid and then have all of whatever extra money you can put into it applied to the HELOC just before the interest adjustment date. And then if you need some of that money back out, you can use it again, right? You can take it back out. But that's something to be aware of. What are you showing us there, Carter?
Okay, this is the current rate. I was not correct. It's 3.05.
Okay, so 385 times point, say it again, sorry.
3.05%.
Yeah, that's what I put. Oh,
Okay.
yeah, 3.05. So I multiply by, when you're doing a decimal, you want to multiply by 100, right? To put it into a decimal, like take the interest, multiply by 100. So that would make it decimal 0.35. Okay, and then you divide it by 12 payments for the year if it's monthly. Calculate
1122.91.
Yes, I made it 92 because of the
Okay.
7 rounded up.
91.7. All right.
Round up, right? So yeah, so that's 1122.92 exactly. Okay, so that's how that's calculated, just so you guys know how that works. And so if you're going to fish that property, then you would be wanting to charge more than, so here's a couple of things to think about. Your minimum required amount is 1122.92, but that's just interest. That's not your principal coming down. So if I were to do if I were to fish that property, I would be wanting to turn it into a situation where I know that my principal is going to be coming down as well. So in other words, if I'm going to calculate somebody else's payment to me, you're at 3.5% interest, which is pretty high for today, right? So you might not get away with charging a 2-point spread just because people know that they can get 2% around that right now. But if you went with 4.5%, then we'd have to look at what that payment would be. So let's just run that. If you were to sell that property, well, plus you've got tons of equity, right? You've got it, you know, you're only at 61% loan to value, so you've got quite a bit of equity in there. So if the property is worth 630, what is the high end of the value of the properties in your area, do you think?
Up in the 700, 710.
Okay, so is your property comparable to any of those?
Oh yeah, this property's been totally, like, the upstairs has been totally remodeled. Downstairs, not so much.
So you could support that price, you could show the value?
I could support middle of the road, like 640, 650.
Okay, so say, let's go, because you're at 630 right now. So if we went with
Yeah.
650, so if we
Okay.
put $650,000 as the price that you would sell it for, right? And multiplying that by 0.7, that would be 45,500. So if that was the down payment, right, then the loan amount would be 604,500. Okay, and I wouldn't say down payment, but when you're looking to put the numbers into your calculator. So what I did is I took the purchase price of 650 and I put that number in, and then I pushed price on the calculator. And then I multiplied that by 0.07 to find out what 7% would be. And then I pushed down payment, which is right beside the word price. It says DN, the PMT for down payment. Okay, right there. And then I just pushed loan amount, and then it gave me 604,500. All right, so now I've got those three numbers in. I've got price, down payment, and loan amount. Okay, so then to get an idea of what someone would be, so if you were to take option money for this, if you were going to sell an option on this, you'd be looking around $45,000 on this property, because it's not a low end property, right? You don't want to take too little of an amount. Because if they ever default, then you don't have a lot of money in, on your side. That if you ever had to, battle it or anything else like that, you want to make sure you have the money to cover that. So, so if the loan amount is 604,500 and your interest rate is 3.5, and we want to add a percentage for theirs, because again, remember, they're going to charge, you're going to be basing their payment on what they would pay if they were able to get a mortgage. So most of the people that'll be coming to you can't qualify for a mortgage. So even if they could finally get someone to say, yes, it's going to be a B lender, and there's probably going to be CMHC fees involved. Okay. So you're not charging CMHC, and you are not charging the same amount as a B lender in interest rate. You're actually still comparably low compared to a B lender. Okay. So if you went with putting in 4.5% interest, and they were based on a 25-year term, which is typically what we do, right? Then you just push payment after that, and their payment would be $3,345 rounded off, okay? Plus their tax, whatever the cost of taxes are. So on a house that's around close to $700,000, that's going to be a reasonable price that a person would have to pay in that price point. Okay, it's not out of whack. Just put it that way.
That's principal and interest, but no taxes, correct?
Right, you'd have to add whatever the taxes would be to that, would be their monthly payment to you, because you have to cover yours. Now, this means if your minimum required payment to cover interest is only $1,122.92, that's a cash flow of $2,222.82. Now, keep in mind, your payment doesn't include principal. So you would be able to apply basically $2,222 a month towards the principal of your mortgage plus that interest. So your principal of your mortgage will come down by that much. And that's how you could fish that property to somebody based on numbers like that. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, cool. All right, does anybody else have questions at that point so far? And if you haven't gotten to the week about running the calculator, you don't get it yet, so that's okay. It's just gone like this, and I understand that, don't worry about it, but you're seeing how we run the numbers, and you're going to have that in your head. When you get to that, you'll have heard this a little bit before that. Okay, so but otherwise, okay, MJ, go ahead.
Sorry, Candy, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but where did you say you can get the amortization calculator from?
Oh, so when you get to, well, I think it's week 5 that I have that in, no, week 3 or 4 that I have in there. But just so you guys know, this is the name of it. It's a Canadian qualifier, and you can get either the 3X or the 4X. And I don't have the 4X beside me, but either one, 3X, 4X, it doesn't matter, but you want the Canadian qualifier. Otherwise, you're getting the US. If it's just the qualifier, because I've had some people ask me about that, it will not calculate you or Canadian. Okay, this one here has a button on it that I can push. Where is it? Oh, this one's above the 9. And it says right there, it says Canadian or US, right? So you can see how I can switch it back and forth there. So I can calculate it for US, but I can also calculate it Canadian. Now the company is a US company, but they've made one that'll switch back and forth to Canadians. So now where to get it? There's a company called Ag Services. Okay, sorry, let me back up. Lebanon Ag Services, AG Services. It's an agricultural company, okay? You can't find it on their website. You have to pick up the phone and call them. All right, and I don't remember the phone number. I just know it starts 519. It's in Listowel, Ontario. And they're just a family-run business, super, super friendly. I don't know if they still do it the same way, but it used to be, we'll send you the calculator, you send us the money. Don't, like they just want to check. They don't like credit cards or anything. They're so laid back and casual. So be honorable, make sure you send them the money, because they're just a very trusting, old-fashioned family type business, okay? The kind of thing you still want to see happening. So anyway, so that's where you get it, all right? And because, yeah, if you go on their website, you're going to be lost. You'll not find it there, okay? You're going to go, okay, well, I can buy stuff for my farm, but what about anything else? So don't even ask me why they're on there. There used to be another place in Vancouver that sold them. Jubilee Rose Enterprises, but they seem to have gone under. We haven't been able to find them since then. So,
There's a place in Calgary you can get them too.
oh, is there now? What is it?
So the Calgary Mortgage Brokers Board, whatever it's called.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and they sell them for $70 plus tax.
Awesome.
And
Good.
if you guys go onto Facebook Marketplace, there's a lot of realtors that just dump them. I think Trudy got one from there for half price. I got one for $15-30.
Oh, good.
Mine for $30.
Yeah,
Oh, good.
so just look for them.
Yeah, Marketplace, Kijiji might even have them, but Marketplace is where most people go nowadays. So that's a great resource for things. I always did that with my kids with their high school calculators as well. We always had to seem to get a new one every year. When you buy them secondhand, kind of do that. Anyway, all right, because you definitely want this. This is your best friend. This thing is going to tell you how much money you're going to make. Whether you're a numbers person or not, you don't need to know a lot of the buttons. And when you get to the weekend calculations, boy, oh boy, I have mapped it out for you. I tell you what every single button means. I show you between the two different types of calculators. You know, I give you 10 different example questions to try, and then I give you the questions again with the answers. And I literally say, push this button, now push this button, now push this button, so that you have a step by step know what to do. Okay? Cool. And if you ever aren't sure if you want to clear the calculator, you just push shift and then the multiplication button. Shift is the teal button and it clears it. So you start fresh. What was that?
I just have a question.
Sure.
Was there an app for that as well?
You
Did you
can
mention
have
it?
an app, and I don't have a problem if you want to have the app, that's fine. A lot of people will get that. I personally don't use the app. I got into the habit of not doing it for several different reasons. One is if you're ever doing this face to face with a client, I love handing my calculator to somebody and asking them to put the numbers in, because it's them involved in the multiplication of it and the math, and it really engages them. So if you're online, it really doesn't matter. They can download the app, or you can push the buttons and show them the numbers like that, whatever you want to do. And they can download the app and follow along with you, whatever. That works fine that way. But if you're ever face to face with someone, here's the problem. First of all, I like it to be professional. So if I were to hand someone my phone and they accidentally dropped it, we both will feel bad. And I'm going to feel uncomfortable asking them to replace my phone. Right? And how much do iPhones cost nowadays? They're not cheap, right? So that's one thing, is something could happen to your phone. The other thing is, how many times do you guys get personal texts that you maybe don't want anybody else to see? Right? If a personal text came in from Michael Gabrielle while you're showing someone the numbers, and it was like one of those romantic texts, you know, see you later, honey, see you tonight, when you see what I got ready for you. Well, you definitely don't want to be handing your calculator to somebody on your phone at that moment. So there's a few reasons to not be doing that. That's for me, that's my opinion. Also, if somebody does contact you in the middle of working the numbers, you're gonna have to clear it and start over. So it's not as professional, it's not as safe, and as far as, you know, your equipment. And my calculator, well, it came with a nice sturdy case. Everybody, well, this one is kind of like one of those otter cases, for heaven's sakes, it is awesome. But they're all different types of cases. But if I drop this, it's not the end of the world. It's not going to, you know, cost as much to replace. So that's me. That's what I do. Yeah, you got that's your manual right there that John's showing you guys. So anyway, okay. So
Thanks.
what's that?
Just saying thank you.
Oh, you're welcome, hon. You're welcome. But yes, the short answer is yes, you can download the app. It's going to cost you about the same as if you bought it on Marketplace at a discount. Okay. All right. So that's something to keep in mind. Now, if for the sale of or for the purchase of that other property, I'm going to share my screen and just, where do I have this? There it is. Okay. So this is the listing. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. Fill my screen here. Okay, can you guys see this, or are the numbers just too small? Heath, can you
Great.
read that? Because I can see you.
It's clear.
It's
Looks
clear.
good.
Looks clear to me.
Okay, so he's got, I'm gonna just scroll it up a bit here. So this is the property itself, the main house. And this is what he wants to buy. So this is the date that we listed, that the house was listed. Let's see here. This is the finished floor area for the house on the main floor, below main. So when you're talking square footage, guys, you don't include the basement. All right. If it's a fully developed basement, then you can let them know it's fully developed basement, or if it's a walkout, people will automatically go, okay, well, then I've got extra living space, but the square footage is counted from the ground floor up. Okay, when you actually do that. I have caught realtors that have included a basement, especially if it's a walkout, and that's wrong. They're not supposed to do that. So just, you always want to confirm that. Okay, because look at this, it does say total square footage, although, and they have broken it down, but they're not supposed to include the basement in the square footage. So we know what year it was built here. There's a shop, a den, just different things. So here's your asking price. This is the original price. They haven't come down in price, which is good to know. Approximate days on market, it says this is the first day it was on here. Do you have any ideas how many days it's been on market now? Where's the list price? Oh, right
I
here.
believe,
So,
I think
a
it
week.
was,
It's a week, because there's the list price, the list date.
yes.
Okay, so it's been on for a week. So, you know, you got your basic property information. I thought this was yours. That's why I wanted to bring it up.
I wish.
Well, there you go. It might be, right? So it's
That's
occupied
correct.
seller. There's no levies or liens on the property. There's your taxes that you pay for that. So you divide that by 12, you'll know what your taxes are on the property. This is what it comes with. I'm just looking to see here. Bylaws, wood rental, you can rent it. I'm just kind of going through. I like to look at all the information that's on these. There's the size 0.85. It's not irregular frontage. Okay. Alrighty. And then you got your dimensions of your rooms. Title form conventional. Freehold.
And what really piqued my thing is occupied by seller. So the seller,
Yeah.
it lives in.
Yes, so you can offer them, you know, some opportunities to save or make a profit tax free, which is really nice. Now I'm just going to check to see here.
Candy, one consideration I have is because they've listed with Remax, they will probably most likely have to pay the realtor fee or some sort of stuff like that, even if they fish it, right?
Well, maybe. So here's one of the things that I would say to you. First of all, I know it's a primary resident you're looking for, and if you wanted to talk to them about the deal while it's listed with the realtor, then yes, that's going to have an effect on the price. Okay, as far as what they get to keep in their pocket, they will have to adjust for realtor fees, and that's going to have to be addressed. You know, and it makes it more difficult when you're negotiating a fishing deal because you're typically looking for no money down, right? Or low money. Now, if you're moving in, you're not having a tenant buyer that's going to have an option amount of money or contracting you for hire, giving you $5,000, you know, contract fee. So you're not going to have money to offset any down payment that the seller might want from you buying it. So that's something to consider. You're both sides of the equation. You're the investor, buyer, right? So you're aware of that. So that's something to keep in mind, is that you might have to come out of pocket some money because you're essentially the one that's going to be buying an option to purchase it, right? Or if it's seller financed, if you're putting a down payment down, just to keep that in mind. Now, having said that, you are looking to sell your property. So whether you sold it outright, clear, or you fish it, you've got equity in there, and or you'll have option money coming from that if you fish it, right? So those are some things. If you sold it outright, then you've got, you know, over $200,000 in equity.
Yes, now, I wouldn't want to put the whole 200,000 on that property, though. I'd want to maybe go in with the minimum that the seller would want for upfront money and fish the balance, correct?
Right, exactly. So you'd have to find out what their scenario is. So when this is with this case, what you're looking at is, first of all, you're going to want to go back and look at the lessons that I have on negotiations and working with sellers. Okay. Those two that you definitely want to review. But the other thing is when a property is listed with a realtor, I always insist on meeting the sellers regardless of whether I have a realtor or not. And I typically don't show up with a realtor because I don't need somebody to represent me. Whenever you have someone representing it, the word, the legal word is they're representing you. Break the word down. Just because it's been representing, we say it that way, that's not actually what it means. In a legal sense, it means that they're representing you because you're incapable of presenting yourself. So I always present myself. You know what I mean? So I don't need to represent myself because I'm quite capable of just presenting myself and acting on behalf of my own self. So just so you understand the language around all that, it does make a difference. Now myself, what I do is I always want to talk directly to a seller because, and most realtors will balk on this, especially a listing realtor. They like to have control, don't they, Heath?
Yeah, he did not want to.
An example, right? Realtors want to be in control of the deal. So they're not going to want you to sit down with the seller in most cases. You're going to get some realtors like Heath or like Jamie who understand and think a little bit differently. And they understand that, you know, hey, the whole point is to get the deal to work, right? So let's get the minds together and see if we can come to something. But
If you get lucky, you can get a good realtor that really knows what you're doing, Carter, and they'll just walk you right through it.
yeah.
Okay.
Now, having
I know
said that,
the realtor that is representing the seller did
yeah,
not
so
want
if the
me to
realtor
talk.
that's representing the seller, what I usually say to them is, or I always say to them is, I would like to have a look at the property and I'd like to talk with the seller of that property. They typically would say, no, we're not going to do that. And then you just say, well, I'm serious. I would like to make an offer on the property, but I'm not going to make an offer on the property unless I can talk to the person living in that property for years and knows more about the property than you do. I'm
Okay.
purchasing something, you've got an asking price of close to $1 million. I am not buying something from somebody who knows nothing about it. I am going to buy something from the homeowners who can tell me all about it. So, and all you have to do is put in a blank offer, subject, not blank, but I mean a general offer subject to sitting down and working out the details with the seller, and that, you know, the offer is subject to being satisfied with everything that you've said with the seller, and that there most likely will be changes and amendments made once talking to the seller. If it comes down to having to be forceful about that, what I'm getting at is that they have to legally present any offers that come in. Okay, so if you put in an offer subject to the offer being confirmed based on talking to the seller, or however you want to present it, if you have to go that route. Typically you don't. The other thing that I've actually done is gone and knocked on the door and said, hey, you know, I would like to actually put an offer on your home. I know you're working with a realtor and I'm fine with working through your realtor, but I've requested to actually meet with you because you're the homeowners and I'm serious about buying the property, but I want to meet with the people that have actually lived in the house and can answer any questions I have about it. Would you be open to having a meeting with me and your realtor together? And I haven't had a seller say no, because you're like fresh meat there, ready to make an offer. Okay.
So Candi, so I want to meet with you and your realtor, or just?
Oh, I
you?
always say that because I'm not trying to out the realtor.
Okay.
I'm just wanting to make sure that I'm able to talk to the seller. Right? Because the realtor, I'm not trying to make the realtor feel uneasy that I'm trying to go around them or anything else like that. I have nothing to hide. And the seller is usually more comfortable if their realtors are there. That's why they have a realtor. It's because they haven't, you know, got the confidence or even thought about the idea of selling it themselves. So that's what I do. And it keeps it very neutral and easygoing, and the sellers feel comfortable having the realtor there. And the realtor feels a little bit more comfortable because, they're able to be part of the meeting. They don't always like it, but ultimately the whole point of it is to have the property sold, right? So they'll get paid if you buy the property. That's the way I look at it.
Mhm.
Okay.
Not all realtors are as open-minded and as educated as Heath, though.
They're not, but you actually have the decision. You and the seller actually are the ones that make that decision, not the
Not the
realtor. They don't
realtor,
own the
right.
property. And they have to do what's in the best interest of the seller. And if they're not acting in the best interest of the seller can fire them.
Carter, if you bring an offer, it's, if you give a decent offer, maybe list, and is subject to agreement of terms, they're gonna get excited, regardless of how you want to negotiate the terms. They're gonna present your offer.
Okay.
Okay. I've only had a couple of realtors that really balk at the idea that I'm going to want to talk to the seller. And a couple of times they've even challenged them and said, well, what are you hiding? They don't like that. It's kind of like, well, I'm not hiding anything. Well, then let me talk to them. Well, no, you're talking to me. They hired me. So then I go and I talk to the seller. Like, I'm just not messing around. If I'm looking to buy a property, I'm looking to buy a property. And I've come to the point in my career, well, years ago, I did that. I'm not going to let somebody else tell me what I can and can't do when it comes to my business, as long as me and somebody else that I'm doing the deal with are in agreement. A third party can't tell me I can't do my job. So I'm just letting you know that sometimes you'll run into that. It's not necessarily going to be the issue, but there's a reason I like to meet with the seller, is what I'm trying to get across. And then this is how I deal with it if you have a problem, because I do have almost every time when a realtor has been involved with the seller, I almost every time I've had the realtor say that they're not comfortable with me meeting with the seller. So just to let you know that part of it. But that's just my experience, and that's all why I'm sharing this, in case you come up against that, but it doesn't mean you will. I'm just preparing you if you did. Jamie has a comment. Go ahead. Okay, good.
Yeah, I was just thinking on this. I've put a couple deals together in this last year off the MLS. I just go door knocking. The properties are not listed. I go find them myself. I put the buyer and seller together, and I take, because there's not two realtors involved, I take half the commission of what would.
There you go.
And the only point I would make, because I, bought 15,000 worth of camera equipment, and there's an infinite amount of houses. So maybe avoid the ones that are listed, because, I've avoided homes that are listed to put deals together for people. And I'm just saying, like the realtors aren't necessarily the bad guys
No.
on this. And, the amount we have to pay to get licensed, and, the reason people find these properties is because of the marketing the realtors have done, and the cost of the signs and the license and the photos and the time spent. So yeah, that's
You definitely want to be paying the realtor involved for sure.
yeah. Like, I feel like
You're not
if
going to
that's
try
how
and
the property came across, is because it was professionally listed.
right.
And I think, the realtor should get paid their full amount that they're asking for.
Yeah, I agree with
my
that.
opinion, because even as a realtor, I'll take half a commission. I won't make a seller pay full commission if I'm putting them together and I've gone door knocking and put it together. So I'm just saying, like, maybe just door knocking any house.
Yeah.
This could work, because I've done it twice in the last year.
Yeah, it's great. And it's just a different way to do, like, I've done that as well. I've gone door knocking on properties, especially areas that I've been doing when I was doing new construction and such. And I just let people know that, hey, I'm building properties in the area. I'm an independent builder. I'm great with doing creative ideas that would work best for the seller. I can share with you some of the ways that I've actually helped the sellers do different, things that were in their best interest when it came to selling. And if you're curious about what I've done, and then I've shown them some of the properties that I've built. So I did a lot of door knocking with that, and it's a great way to go. But Jamie's right. If a realtor's involved, you're not trying to skirt the realtor. Realtors pay a lot of money for their licensing and for marketing And if a deal doesn't go through, they don't get compensated that with that money. It's gone. So they need the sale. So keep that in mind and just remind them, look, I'm trying to get you your money. You've put a lot of money into the marketing of this. You've done a great job. I would just like to talk to the seller because they've owned it for years and they can answer the questions that I have, better than you can. As someone who's lived in the property, they'll know what I want to know. So, and that's all you're trying to do. And I just was letting you know that there are some times where a realtor will balk at that, but just stand firm on that and talk to the seller. Because sometimes people will be like, oh, okay, well, maybe I guess I don't need to, but you do want to talk to the seller. So anyways,
That sounds great. And actually, that's a good way to overcome their anxiety about, well, because the guy said, I don't want you to talk to the seller, talk to me.
oh,
And
he
I
did
think
already.
he,
Okay.
he already said that point blank to me.
Yeah.
And it's probably because he felt that I'm trying to backdoor, go direct to the seller and cut him out of the deal, which is not my
And then
intent.
make sure you
I would
always
want
put
to
them at
pay.
ease. Yeah. Make sure you
Yeah, I
always
would-
put them at ease, keep them relaxed about that whole thing. You're there to do business and you
Mhm.
understand they have a stake in it financially and you're not looking to cut them out of that. You're actually, in fact, trying to make the deal put together, but you're not willing to put in an offer without talking to the people that have lived in that property and can tell you about it the most. That's really what it comes down to.
One related question
Sure.
is, with that property, is it necessary to find out how much of a mortgage they have on it or something, being as I would?
Yeah. So when
Okay.
I sit down with them, then I'm going to be talking to them about, again, it comes back to looking at the negotiations, whether it's for sale by a realtor or for sale by owner. I'm going to walk through the house with the owner, whether it's through video or live, whatever the scenario is. I'm going to be walking through that property with the owner, getting them to share with me all their most favorite, parts about the house. Tell me what you love about it. What are your best features about it? Tell me all the great things that you know that I need to know to make a decision to want to buy the property. And then once they've done all that and you've got them comfortable and talking with you and chatting and open and everything else, that's when you go, okay, so, all right, I love everything you've shown me so far, but I need to know what it is about the house now that either needs work or that if you had a chance to do it over again, what would that be? Right? So tell me about those things. So it's not like, so tell me about all the worst parts about your house or all the parts that's fallen apart or all the renovation projects I'm in for. You're saying it in a positive way of, just let me know now if there's anything that you could do differently, what would that be? Just so I can have in mind, what I might need to be looking at when I move in. Or is there anything that needs to be addressed or that has been a concern for you? And then just, you're making it very casual. So you can go through the negotiating part of things a little bit later, but that's how I would address that. Now, you definitely want to have a conversation with them to say, look, I'm willing to, if everything checks out, I'm fine with a full price offer. I've got no intention of taking your equity and I have no intention of cutting out your realtor. But in order for me to do that, there's a couple of things that I need. And so, what you're looking to do is to show them how you can actually, and in fact, I even say to them, I actually can show you how I might be able to give you more depending on whether or not you can help me with the way I want to buy and depending on, how this comes together. And that usually piques up their interest. And so I usually tell people, look, I buy a lot of property. After a while, the banks don't let me have mortgages. I don't qualify after I've purchased, 3 or 4. And so because this is something I do for a living, this particular property, I would actually be looking to live in myself. In that case, that's what you're saying, you and your son. I would describe that as I was looking through the property, that would have already come out probably a bit in conversation, because people like to know that another family is moving into their home because this has been their home. So anyways, that would have come out probably in my conversation already. And then when I got to the point of sitting down with them, I would just, I would have already found out from them, where are they moving? What do they need to move? Are they retiring? Are they, what, right? What kind of resources do they have? Are they buying another place? Are they buying a motorhome and traveling? What are they doing, right? There's so many different scenarios that could be coming up why a person might not need all their money right away. And if I would also, be sitting down and say, okay, so here's how this works for me. Have an open mind. I'm going to present something to you. You can say no if you want to, but first let me show you why it's possibly in your best interest, and how I can actually give you more money tax-free. And so then I break it all down, and again, back into week 7, and the negotiation week in week 5, you'll see a lot of this in there, where I basically just break down, like, this is what I'm looking to do. I usually ask the seller to carry financing instead of me bringing in a joint venture partner. And that way, because it's your house, you actually get the profit tax-free because it's a primary residence. So for example, if you were to carry a mortgage for me, let's just say, whatever the interest rate would be over the next 10 years, then we would add up, say 2% interest or 3% interest, whatever they would go for. We would add that up, multiply it, by 10 years, and that would be the amount that I would pay in interest. So instead of you paying tax on that, and let's just say, let's just run some examples of numbers. How much was that property again? 900 and something?
Yeah, 945.
So 945,000, let's just say you bought that, right? And then we push the loan amount, and you put 2, and then interest. Actually, let's just do it this way. 945,000 times 0.02%. That's $18,000 and $18,900 in interest, right? 2%, right? So if you multiply that by 10, you just add a 0. That's $189,000 tax-free that I would add to the purchase price, and I would be buying it from you at a monthly income, like a monthly payment that we agree upon, 0% interest, because the interest is now included in the purchase price so that you don't have to pay tax on that. Would you like to make about $190,000 tax-free? And I'll buy it at fair market value, and we won't be cutting out your realtor. How does that sound? And then they'd probably be saying to you, well, are you putting any money down? And you can say, well, it just depends on what you're wanting. And I always have that saying, I don't know if you guys have heard it, but I always adhere to it. He who speaks first loses.
Loses.
Okay, so, well, how much would you like? And they'll typically start high, or they'll have, the idea that originally you were going to put 20% down or something like that. And I typically come back with, well, traditionally I pay $1 down, but I'm open to, what do you need? Because the more I put down, the less you're making tax-free as a profit. So you tell me, what do you want to be making tax-free, and how much do you need up front compared to what you want? Like, what do you actually need? Do you need it all, or do you want to keep the money in it and actually get a return on that money, which is tax-free? And it's like investing in your own property for the next 10 years. So then I wait to hear what they say. I don't say anything. I just sit there and I wait and I wait and I wait. And I'll say, you have to tell me. I can't just tell you because I don't know what your needs are on that. You actually have to tell me. And then I just wait. And you'll know your number of what you can or can't do. And you have to be willing to walk away always. Even if you're buying your own home, you have to be willing to walk away. They're not going to want you to walk away if you're paying a full price offer and offering over and above tax-free money. They're going to want to negotiate with you. Some people might say, you know what, I'm really not sure, I'm not comfortable. So I let them know they're staying on title. They own the house. I don't own it until I've paid it off. They don't come off title until they've been completely paid out. So their security is that property. If at year 5 or 6 or 10, like 9 years and 11 months, I default and don't make up those payments, I could lose all the equity that I've paid towards that property. They're still on title until they're not, until they're paid out, right? So, and in that case, I would lose all of the equity I put in, which means that they would make even more money. If I make a mistake, if I default, if I screw up, if they have to kick me out of that property, I will sign a contract with them that they will not be forced to, they will not have to foreclose on me. I will move. I will leave. I will work out with them a solution for me to get out of the property so that they can take over that property and they would get to keep all that equity. Okay, so that they're in control, they own that property. I don't have, it's not mine. The other thing is though, is I would say to them, but I do have the option to list it and sell it to recover my equity if I feel something happens. Life happens sometimes. So you want to make sure that you put in there that you would have the right to make up any arrears and within, I usually go with 3 months, or the right to list it and sell it.
And this is in the offer?
Yeah, I always put that in there. So those are just, I just thought of that. So I make sure I just mentioned it right now. So yeah, so those are the kinds of things that I think about as I sit down with somebody and share with them. Now, some people might be like, well, I need some money up front. And you can say, well, I do have my property up for sale. It's not sold yet, or it might be, I don't know what your scenario is or what your available cash is or anything like that. But if you have access to any equity of your property through the Manulife, even, I don't know, you might be able to give them something down, and or when you get a tenant buyer in your property that gives you the option money or a down payment, you could use that money. It's completely up to you what other funds you have available. But again,
Right.
because you're buying it to live in it, it is slightly different because you're not putting somebody else into it that's giving you money to cover those costs up front, right?
My wife just sold her condo and she has about 220,000. She paid the bank off and she has 220 in her bank. And
Okay,
that's what we were going to put the down payment as 220 against the 946.
Well, there you go. So, I wouldn't even say that much yet. I would first find out what they'd be willing to carry. To say, now, I don't know what you would need down to feel comfortable.
Right.
So again, ask them what they want. And then you guys can think about, okay, well, that's less than what we've got. So let me just look at something here. 945. So that's more than 20% down. Right? What did you say it was? 200 and
220. She wouldn't want to put the whole 220 down. She said 200 even.
okay, so 200. So 21%. So that's fair. That's a pretty fair amount of money to put down, 20% for them to carry financing on the balance. And then then you would just work it out again. What would it be at, the 2% interest for 10 years, multiply that annual amount by 10 years and just say, okay, this is what we would add to the purchase price, tax-free. And the balance would be, we would make those payments to you. You guys would have to come up with what you can afford per month, keep you comfortable, and what they're willing to accept. You could even run it as an amortized amount just to get a general idea. So for example, if you were, so that would be 745, right? Loan amount. And let's just say it was for 30 years at 2% interest, just to get an idea, that would be around $3,154 plus the taxes. So if you said, well, $3,500 a month, would that be all right? Just as a base without penalty for paying anything extra. Because the whole point is to pay it off within 10 years. Right? Or whatever they give you. Sometimes people will balk at 10 and I'll say, well, I can come down less, but that just means you're not going to make as much tax free. If you need the money for something, then fine. But if you're not needing it, you might as well make a profit.
Start high and come down.
Right. And so I typically land around 7 years. The lowest I've gone is 5, but I don't typically like, so I want 7 years because I know myself, I can typically pay a property off within 5 to 7 years. So I like to have 7 just as that comfort level for me. So you have to decide what you think you want to do. Worst case scenarios, you would have to then finance whatever was left over after the period of time that they're willing to carry that for you. And you want to make sure that you can. Okay. Cool. Okay, we got tons of questions before we keep going any further. So let's go with, I think Melissa had hers up, then MJ, and then back to Jamie again. So go ahead, Melissa. Oh, you're muted, hon.
I forgot. I have this question in the chat. So if the seller is holding a financing, then Carter would be making.
Are you able to take your headphones off and just talk directly? Because it's really fuzzy.
I'm going to go outside too.
Okay.
In my house. So if I'm getting this straight, the seller's holding the financing, then Carter essentially would be making himself into a tenant buyer.
No, he would be a buyer, and the seller would be carrying a mortgage with 20% down, 21% down. He is a buyer. He's not a tenant.
Okay.
He would be
Okay.
buying that property and it would be seller financed.
Okay. So if the seller is purchasing another property and it's conditional on the sale of their property, would that not work then?
Absolutely, it would work because he's still putting 21% down and financing the balance, right? And they would just have to show that they've got an income coming in on this property, and they'd have enough money to put down, most likely with 200 grand on another property, depending on the price point that they're going for.
Makes
Then I
sense.
could fish the seller's future property that they might move into.
You could, if you could
And
find
make a
another
triple play.
property for them to move into, you could exchange their down payment with what you would owe on that house. There's so many different options available. Yeah. Okay. Did that answer your question, Melissa? Oh, yeah. Okay, good. All right. And okay, MJ, go ahead.
Hi. I'm just trying to rattle it around in my brain. So if Carter's example, he's the buyer and it's seller finance, and the seller's guarantee is that he will continue to make the payments, put 21% down, and that is the seller's guarantee. But what if the tables were turned that if he ever defaulted to go along with that they're guaranteed, it's theirs, they still have title? But what if the tables were turned where he still put 21% down or any amount down or whatever, still making monthly payments on the home that the seller still owns because it's the same situation?
Yep.
It's still seller financed. What if they change their mind? Then
They
are you
can't.
out your monthly payments?
They
And
can't. It's a contract and you're
Okay.
registered on title as a beneficial owner.
okay, so
Yeah, they can't. And the other thing is, guys, do open up a joint account with that person. The money goes into the joint account. They are not allowed to withdraw the money, and neither are you. But the payment comes out of that account. Now, that's if they've got a mortgage, underlying mortgage. If they don't have an underlying mortgage, then you can just give the money to them directly. But you want it tracked through an account. You want a receipt every single month from them that they've received that money.
Okay.
So you want evidence that you've given them that money. I would do it like either an e-transfer if you're paying them directly. That's probably the easiest way, is to do an e-transfer because you can track that, and you can make a note as to what it was for. And then what you want to do is you want to make sure that they still give you a receipt on that. Because you're working it out like simple interest, because the interest is calculated already in the purchase price. So essentially, you take what the sale price is minus the down payment. Every time you make a payment, you subtract the amount that you've paid. So if you made a $3,500 payment, whatever the taxes were comes off, and the balance is going towards the principal of what is left owing on that mortgage every single payment he makes. So if he makes more, say he made a $5,000 payment one month, minus the taxes, that's how much went towards the principal. So you definitely want to have in the contract, Carter, that there's no penalty for early payout.
Excellent. Yes, I didn't think of that, but I just as soon as you mentioned that.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, Jamie had a question, and then Blaine has a question.
I just forgot to take that little hand thing down. I'm good.
Okay, all right. Okay, go ahead, Blaine.
Thanks. This isn't entirely about the deal that Carter's going through, but I was trying to make this brief and quick and understandable. I was talking to a lawyer recently, and he had a concern, or at least it indicated to me, and I have never heard you say this, so I can't understand why it came from him in this sense. It's a real estate lawyer, someone I was looking at taking over the legal end of things that I'm going to be doing soon. Is there a such thing that if you attain a mortgage, that the mortgage can have within it terms or conditions that indicate that you can't rent that house out to anybody unless it's your primary residence?
That you can't rent it out unless it's your primary residence?
Yes.
No, not that I know of. I mean, there's tons of people that buy a property and rent it out as an income property.
Thank you. I don't mind dealing with information, but misinformation drives me crazy.
Well, I will say this, though, that could be something that's new that has been put in.
Okay.
And this is a good example of why you read every single line of a contract that you sign, including a mortgage. Because most people, here's what happens. You go and they have a stack of papers, right? And they put it in front of you and say, this just says this, sign here. And what do people do? Oh, okay. And they sign it. Or they kind of scan it and go, yeah, okay, I don't really get it, but okay. You know, they must do this all the time. But you're literally allowed to question and or say, no, that needs to come out.
Can you take the
Alright.
contract home and read it and bring it back?
You have the right to do that as well. Yes, absolutely. You even have the right to take it to a lawyer and have it reviewed. Okay, and get a clear understanding of what it is that you're signing.
New builds will have owner occupancy sometimes.
Oh.
You have to be there, rental bylaws. You have to have a certain percentage of rent of owner occupied or 100% owner occupied.
In new neighborhoods or condos or where there's a condo board, definitely they have rules. They can actually say that you can't rent out the property without their permission and on and on. They have to be able to approve all that.
The
Yeah.
big thing was with Airbnb now. Some places they don't allow it now, so that's another one.
Mm.
But that's I want to say a specialized-ish kind of thing for what it is, or maybe more aptly put, it's not the norm.
Yeah, I mean,
for what it is.
You got to think about the fact that there are tons of people that buy property specifically as an income property. So
Oh, of course, yeah.
clear that this is what you're doing is that you're buying a property specifically as an income property if you're getting a new mortgage, right? Like that's if you're qualifying for a new mortgage.
The idea, I was trying to explain to him what I was doing without giving away too much information from a proprietary point of view, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, I need him to know what's going on and what I'm doing. But in the interviewing session that I was going through with him, I didn't want to divulge too much. I just wanted to give him the general basic idea. And then he came up with the idea, well, the only thing that bothers me about what you said is that mortgages have included in them that you can't rent them out unless you're the primary resident. And I was thinking to myself, well,
Primary owner. If you're the primary owner, not the primary resident, if you're living in it, why would you even rent it out? First of all, because you wouldn't be living in it, right? If you're the owner,
Sure.
you rent it, and you wouldn't be living in it if you were renting it. So that doesn't even make sense. And the other part is if you were doing a sublet, like, so for example, if I was buying from somebody who was financing me, I'm a beneficial owner. I can turn around and rent something that I'm a beneficial owner of or an equitable owner in. But you could ask for permission from the seller if they're financing you, that, make sure that they clearly understand in the contract, you agree that I am renting this property out and that you understand that I'm going to be renting it out to somebody. Because that's what I tell people when I'm actually going to be buying it and saying, look, the first thing I want to do is be able to show the property to my tenants that I have. I've pre-qualified some really good tenants. I don't just buy a property and then try to find somebody to put into the property. I pre-qualify my tenants to look for asset tenants to live in my properties. I've screened them ahead of time. And then I look for a quality property to put these people into because they're asset tenants. They'll take care of my investments. So I make sure that they clearly understand that so that I'm showing that property prior to the possession date because I want a tenant before I buy it. So they are very aware of the fact that I'm putting someone in that property. No, nothing is hidden that way.
It may have just been delivery on my end that was misspelled or missaid.
You brought it up because then you also did learn about the condos and stuff like that, right? Because if you have if you're buying a property where there's a condo board, they have the right to screen the tenant as well, and or to say no, we don't want any more tenants in the area. We're maxed out for tenants because we have a percentage allowed, and then you would have to go on a waiting list to be able to have a tenant on that property.
It's good to know. I would never buy a condo anyway, because that's not my thing for what it is.
Yeah.
I didn't want any the limitations, and coming into the game, I haven't even started yet. It's like, whoa, back the ponies up, guys. I just started. You're telling me I can't do this, but it could likely be akin to the idea of what you're saying, is that by not being the actual holder of the mortgage and working through excuse me, a seller financing situation. Although
Well,
when we're doing that, we are put on title as a beneficiary interest in that, are we not?
you're the
Yeah.
beneficial owner in that property. You're the beneficiary in that sense.
Yes.
So the other side of it is too, is even my own lawyer has said to me, lawyers are deal killers. And typically, he's also said to me, they're lazy. So they're used to just a straight up normal deal. So if anything is slightly different, they'll just say it can't be done quite often. So
Yeah.
yeah, you do need to have a lawyer that's used to working with creative offers from real estate investors, because then they'll be more comfortable with that. Just so you're aware of that. Okay.
Oh, absolutely. He fell in all of the right areas and everything else. It was just, there was a hesitancy in his voice. I could hear it. It's like, you're not explaining everything to me, and I don't know everything about what you're doing. And it's like, you won't until I hire you.
Yeah.
That's when I'm going to drop the bomb on everything at that point. But thank you. I wanted to clear that in my own head.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I'm glad you brought it up. And keep in mind though, is the only time you're really working with the lawyer at this point is to hold the money in trust from your tenant buyer, right? If you're giving the option money through that way, and or to register your position on title, but you can do that yourself.
Yep.
Like you can literally go to land titles and say, I'm registering this on title. I have this caveat. I have this, lien encumbrance against the property, and I want to register this on there. All you need is for the seller to go with you to a notary and have that document notarized in front of a notary. What they'll do is they'll squeeze, like if you haven't seen this before, it's like this big giant stamp. They squeeze it and it puts the print in the paper, and then they sign that they've witnessed that this is that person that is selling it, and this is that person that has a claim against it, and they both agree in my presence, and this is my seal, and sign it. You can take that to land titles, and it's cheaper than going through a lawyer because you're just registering your position.
Yeah, the other thing I'd be having them do is review my contracts. I have a deal with I have a deal with a company called Legal Shield. And what they do is that they, for $25 a month, they will offer contract reviews and a whole bunch of other things too as well. They'll make up a will and likes of that. That's how I got linked up with this individual.
Yeah, Legal Shield. I knew about Legal Shield many years ago. Back then, and apparently it's different now. And I do know somebody who is a rep for Legal Shield. If anyone's interested, unless you're, I won't do that.
I'm a rep too. I didn't want to bring that up.
Okay,
but I took that on. But nonetheless, that's not the point.
That's what you're doing fine. Now, many years ago, Legal Shield only the lawyers that you got were not experienced lawyers. Now, not saying that that's a bad thing, because sometimes having someone who's not stuck in the mud, stuck in their own ways and are, blind to, hey, there's other possibilities. Sometimes that's a good thing, because you can show them, look, this is what I'm doing. They can look at it, they can review it, they can go, yeah, okay, I can see that works. Sometimes when you've got someone who's too experienced, they're like, I don't feel like going down that road. I just want to have a straight up normal deal. I don't want to deal with that, right? But we're not your traditional homeowner buyers. We are real estate investors, and real estate investors are almost always looking for creative financing. And this is not unusual. So if you go to the commercial end of real estate investing, it's very normal to do seller financing and creative offers in commercial real estate. It is extremely normal. You're dealing with properties that you're over the $1 million point, right? Like the $1 million point. So it's very normal to have creative offers or a mix of seller financing and regular financing and all kinds of things, or builders financing, or tons of different ways that deals could be put together in that sense. So that's normal. And sometimes finding a lawyer that is used to doing stuff like that is also a benefit. So yeah, if you're working through Legal Shield and you find some really good lawyers in different provinces, you have the ability then to say to people, hey, in this group, give me a call. I don't have a problem with that. And thanks for being honest and letting me know. I don't like people to be promoting themselves and use this as a platform to build their business. But if you're already doing something and you bring it to me and I think it's a benefit to other people, then by all means, for sure, let's do that. I don't have a problem with saying, you know, here's someone that might be of help to you guys. Okay.
Yeah, I wasn't coming here to do anything like that. It was just happenstance I fell upon it. There are other aspects of the Legal Shield thing that I'm into that are relative to me outside of all the real estate stuff. The lawyers firm that they use here in Ontario is Mills and Mills. They've been around for 138 years. They're a very well reputed law firm, but I haven't hired anybody yet. So until I do, I don't really know what they're up to. But the individual I was speaking to, he's a junior lawyer.
Okay, yeah, see
So,
that
yeah.
sometimes quite often they are using a junior lawyer, and they did before too. My experience wasn't great because of what I needed. I needed someone who was kick-ass, and this person was kick-ass, yes.
And this gentleman may not be the same thing either. Like there were some hesitancies in what he brought up, and I talked to at least 6 different lawyers so far. Some of them I just knew it wasn't going to work out. You could hear it in their voice, just like, you know, that it wasn't going to go that way. But anyways, that's got nothing to do with debt reduction. But I thank you for answering my question.
Yeah, yeah. So
I read everything. I read contracts, even if I don't understand any of it. I still read it.
it's a good idea, yeah. Now, Susan, I don't know if you've left already. Did you have a question or you just have to go? You just have to go early? Okay, okay, cool. Thanks for letting us know. All right, Jamie, you had another question and then we'll move on a little bit more here.
I was just saying to Blaine's thing about some people don't qualify for a mortgage if it's a rental property. So they qualify for the mortgage telling the bank it's a primary residence, and they may not realize that, you know, down the road further, they could rent it out, but maybe they think from the beginning because they qualified for it as their primary residence, maybe they think they're stuck that way on that property for life, which I don't think is true.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You do have to disclose what you're using it for when you're buying it, like through the bank. They want to know if you're putting a financing on it. Right. But it doesn't mean that, you know, if you buy a primary residence that you can't down the road, like Jamie was saying, rent it out or sell it. Okay. Just so you're aware of that. Okay. So, Carter, did you get lots of really good stuff there? Yeah. Any more questions before we move on?
No, actually, I've been feverishly taking notes, and if I can, I've got chicken scratching here, and if I can still read it when I rewrite them, I'll be away to the races.
Cool.
Thank
And
you.
make sure you note this date, because this is the date we have the video for. You can go back and look at the video.
I've
And
got the day, the date, and everything like that. One other thing, that just popped into my mind. You open up a joint account with the seller. You e-transfer the seller the payments every single month.
well,
And-
if they had an underlying mortgage, you would do a joint account, right? Where you guys can't withdraw. It's a deposit only. And that way you would have the payments underlying. If they had an underlying mortgage, those mortgage payments would come out of that account. Otherwise, if there's no mortgage in place, if they don't have a mortgage, they own a clear title, you can e-transfer them directly. You don't even have to have a joint account at all.
Okay, now we
Unless they
faithfully
prefer.
make the payment to them. And then it's their responsibility to make the payment to
No,
the
no.
mortgage.
If there's no underlying mortgage, if they own a clear title, you can
Sorry.
e-transfer them directly because it's their money then.
Correct. Going back to if they have a mortgage,
Yeah, then your
We
joint
do-
account, yeah.
so we do the e-transfer into the joint account, and then we trust that they make the payment to their mortgage place, right?
No, because the mortgage will be automatically withdrawn. So ahead of
Okay.
time, they set up automatic withdrawals with that new account for the taxes and the mortgage.
So that joint account is specifically only for withdrawals of
Only, yeah.
P and I, right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Well, interest in tax,
Oh,
PIT.
PIT, okay.
Yeah. Good questions. Alrighty, so next one here. Okay, Michael, here are my questions. Let's see here. Can we still apply for the 30-year amortization from the banks? Yes. In the example you showed us, you changed from a 25-year amortization to a 30-year when you renew the mortgage for the first time. Why don't you apply for a 30-year mortgage from the beginning? So a lot of people don't start out that way. That's why it's set up that way. A lot of people start out with a traditional 25%. So essentially what I'm doing is I was just showing whether you started out with a 30 and you're down to 25, or you started with 25, you're down to 20, or you started with 15 and you're down to 10, or whatever it is. I'm suggesting, and again, I'm not telling you what to do, right? Warning, warning, disclaimer. I'm not telling you what to do, but I'm suggesting that if you reapply, because it's not a renewal at this point, you are reapplying. Just so you guys do know this. They used to allow you to renew and extend it out, but now they make you reapply because they're wanting you to not do that. Okay, just saying. They're going to make it, kind of painful and talk penalties and fees and everything else. So you just want to know, okay, well, what will it cost to reapply at 30 years? Because when you're talking that way, then you can say, so in other words, I could go somewhere else too. I could go to that bank down there or the trust company, and I could apply for that to them, right? If you're not going to give me a good rate or anything, and I want 30 years, if you won't give it to me, I can go to TD, or I can go to ATB, or I can go to BMO, right? And it makes them go, right, okay. And then they'll stop acting like they've got you, under their control. You actually are in the driver's seat. You get to decide. You get to shop around. You get to do what you want. The biggest thing is, though, is you do have to re-qualify for it. If you're going out to 30 years, typically is what they're making everybody do now. You didn't have to used to do that, but now you do. So what I say is find out what the cost will be, and then you compare it. So for example, if we had a $500,000 house, and let's just say you have 20% into it and you've got $400,000 mortgage is your loan amount, and say you've got 2% for interest. So I put 2 and then push interest. And let's just say you started with a 25-year mortgage, and then you push term for the amortization, and your payments are $1,693.80. Okay. And then you decide, okay, so let's just say that this is your balance after, when you're about to renew. You maybe started with a 30-year, but this is what you're down to. And they're saying, okay, now that you're at 25 years and you're at 2% interest, your payments are going to be $1,693.80. So if you want to write that down, right, that's at 25 years for a $400,000 balance at 2%. It's $1,693.80. Do the same thing, $1,693.80. Okay, that's at 25 years. Then if you just, without changing anything else, just push 30 and then term, and then push payment. So now it'll say $1,476.82. So what you do is you find out the difference between the two just by subtracting $1,693.80. So that's a $216.98 difference, right? So $216.98 times 12 months, that's a $2,603.76 per year amount that you can put towards the principal without increasing your payment. So for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, if you were normally paying $1,693.80 and you can afford that and you've been paying that, and then you extend it out to 30 years again and drop your payments, the difference is $216.98. Multiply that by 12, that's $2,603.76, almost $3,000 that you can put towards the principal as strictly principal payments, and you're not increasing your debt load because you're still paying the same amount you were before, but you're paying less in interest now because you've extended it out to 30 years. So the payments dropped. But if you pay the same amount, you can make a lump sum payment every single month of $216.98 every single month directly to the principal, which makes that principal come down almost $3,000 every year, and it didn't cost you anything extra. That's just one way to increase paying down that mortgage without it increasing your costs every month. Okay, so that's why I think it's worth doing, because it's not just that year, it's every single year. So if you had a 5-year term, if I multiplied that by 5 years, that's $13,018.80. $13,000 that I'm not having to work harder to do. It goes directly to my principal over and above what if I didn't take it out to 30 years. Now, what if you were down to only 20 years left and you brought it out to 30? It's going to be even more, right? You're going to have even more going towards principal, and you're not having to work any harder for that. Okay, so then you got to look at it and say, okay, well, what are the penalties to do that? Is there any penalties? Because literally you're at the end of that term, so there's no payout penalty because you're at the end of that term, and you're just renewing, getting a new mortgage. So there'll be the setup fee or anything else like when you first started. And as long as you've got, some equity in that property, you're not starting with a CMHC, you're not dealing with CMHC fees or anything else. Okay, so it's just some things to think about. So if it's not going to cost you really anything more than maybe $1,000 for fees to get it set up, or even 1 year's worth of the difference of, say it cost you $3,000 even, which I don't think it would cost you that much, but let's just say it even did, you're still ahead 4 years of extra payments. So you have to make that decision yourself, but I'm always looking at how do I pay less interest to the bank and more of it's going to my benefit because I'm the one that's working for my money, not them. They're already ripping me off, and we know that already. They're triple dipping at least into that property. And if they foreclose on you, they're getting 4 times the value of that house from you, because they get paid out from the insurance company. They've been paying you all along. They've been investing that money at 4 times the value of the loan. And you've been making monthly payments all the time. So, and then they'd sell the house and get paid that way as well. So they're thoroughly ripping you off. So don't feel bad on making a few steps to protect yourself as much as you can. Okay. All right. Okay. MJ had a question there, and then John.
Hi, Candy. I am wondering, I'm going to have to rewatch the pre-recording once it's done. I'm finding some of it's going over my head, but
well, you haven't
anyway,
either, so it's okay.
Okay. So with a mortgage amount, like I'm just keying in some numbers here just so I can wrap my head around it. So for, say, just like in our neck of the woods, a decent property could be like, 250, 210, whatever. Yeah. So, but I've just used an example of a little bit lower than that, like $150,000 property at an interest rate of 2%, amortized over 30 years, with like paying it frequency monthly. In your expertise, I'm trying to word it properly because I know you're not recommending or whatever, but if you can get a mortgage traditionally or through a broker or what have you, these are things I just don't know. Is it better to take it out for the 30 years to get the mortgage for the 30-year period and still pay it in a fourth of the time?
Well, if you're starting out fresh, first of all, whenever possible, I don't qualify for mortgages, period, even on my own home, just so you're aware of that. But if you already own your house and you have the ability to qualify and you want to make the best of paying down your mortgage as fast as possible, these are tricks that you can do, okay? Just so you're aware of that. This isn't for every scenario. This is if you're already in that scenario and you want to know how can you do the biggest damage to that principal fast as possible, right?
Right,
So
right.
you can start out with a 30-year to keep the payments as low as possible, but because you weren't already paying a higher amount, what you could do is go, okay, well, what would I pay if it was 25 years? Can I pay that amount? And then you could just put anything extra to get started. Whatever you can put extra to get started, then you would do that, right? And you could calculate, for example, if I had, like you said, 150,000. So if I put 150,000 in my calculator and I put 25-year term at 2% interest as an example, I'd be paying $635.18. If I change that to 30 and a term of
541.
yeah, 553.81.
Okay.
So then I'd be like, $100 and some dollars difference. So if I can pay the lower amount and just put $100 or $200 towards my principal every month over and above, and then I know
Do
what
it.
25-year would be. I mean, you could use
Okay.
it as a guide if you want to, but I mean, my thought process is whatever you have extra, put it on the mortgage if you don't need it, right? Because you're
Okay.
paying it down. So here's the thing. A lot of people want to know, Candi, should I put money into my RSPs every single month?
Right.
Or should I put it on my mortgage? Now, again, warning, bling, 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 disclaimer, I'm not telling you what to do, okay? If you want to invest in registered rip-off sucker program, you can do that. But if you don't want to do that,
Right.
think about this. What are you getting on your RSPs after you've drawn it out? Okay, so there's a couple of things. This is the sales pitch on most RSPs. You're going to get a certain rate of interest rate. Let's just say you get 8%. Most people are happy with 8%, like in an RSP. Okay, let's just say it is. Your management expense ratio is going to be between 2 to 4%. Okay, so let's cut the difference and call it 3. So now you're down to 5% net. Then every time they move your money in and out of an account, an investment, there's a transfer fee. Okay, they don't tell you what that is unless you ask for a breakdown of every single fee that they charge you every single time. They're not telling you. They're showing you your account balance when they give you your statements. They don't show you everything else unless you request it. Okay, and then you got to look at, okay, so if when you retire, they always say, well, you'll be drawing it out when you're paying the least amount of taxes because you'll be in a lower tax bracket. And my thought is, are you crazy? I
Right.
really hope I'm not making less money when I retire than I am now.
You're right.
I've been working my butt off my whole life. I better be making more money when I retire, not less, right? So they're making the assumption that you're going to be making less money because you're no longer at a job, right?
Okay.
But they're not counting on the fact that you've been working towards other things like what we're doing here to be able to replace the income that you've been working for, and now you've got your money working for you, right? So you'll have to pay tax on anything that you draw out of that. So then there's the tax part of it as well. So then you got to look at, okay, well, all of that included, is that money making me a guaranteed return or not? And am I having any control over where that money is being invested? So again, now there's down to, for me, an ethical side. Are they investing that money in making guns that they're selling to another country? Are they, what is it invested in? What is that being used for? How do I know where you're putting my money? And do I agree with what you're putting my money towards?
Do you have a right to know what they're investing your money in?
Well, you can ask, but they're going to be switching it around. They're going to be putting it in different investments according to what the company's investing it in. There's a lot of different things. Now, the other side of it is too, I've also known a lot of people that have worked for companies that do investments. And I know for a fact, like I've had 2 employees over the years that have quit working where they were to come and work with me because of the fact that they were being asked to liquidate the company's portfolio out of an investment because they knew that it was crashing and sell it to the clients. So the clients take the hit. So just so you know, this does happen. It goes on. And so for me, I want to know where my money is. I know people that have RSP accounts that it's going backwards.
No.
And they don't even understand why. My own father-in-law gave me $500 to invest for my son's school education when he was born. And I said, can I put it in real estate? And he's like, no, that's risky. And I'm like, you bought a house in an area in Calgary, it's called Parkdale, when it was $12,000 and his house was worth over $600,000 when he told that to me. Like, seriously? Okay, because that's your experience? No. Anyways, so I invested the money, and it by the time my son turned 21, went from 500 to being worth $510,000. Or no,
Wow.
500 to $510. Forget the thousand. What am I talking about? 500. He gained $10 in 21 years.
Wow.
So just saying,
Crazy.
right? Anyway, and oh, yay. No, wait, the government was going to match the gain. So actually it was $20.
Crazy.
Anyways, that's just one thing. So what's the other side of that? If, for example, you were making a payment into your RSP account, $200 a month, is it better to put into RSP or into your mortgage and pay down your mortgage, or a credit card that's at 20% or whatever? You tell me, you answer the question. Are you getting the same amount return where you're placing it compared to where you could put it? So is your RSP going to pay you at the end of the day a net that is going to be greater than where you put it? So if you put it on your mortgage,
No, it's not.
and you're making a mortgage payment of 2% amortized, not simple interest, but amortized, and you're saving yourself that money tax-free, then it's worth more than just the amortized amount as well, because you're going to include what would the tax be if it was a profit. In this case, it's a profit you don't pay tax on because it's a profit you would have had to pay that you don't pay now. It's the same with your credit card. If you put it on your credit card, you had 20% bill on that card. Well, what have you saved yourself over all those years that you no longer will have to pay it on? Right? When we looked at those examples of the credit cards the other day, what was that, 200 and some years? Well, no, 175 years, even if he was half the payment because he was making more than the minimum required, still even half of that, even if it was 75 years, you took off 100 of those years, it's still 75 years of that interest rate over all those years, tax-free, that he's just saved himself. Right. So you have to answer that question. Where is that money better spent?
So if, and I just don't know this yet, but I will, like with a 30-year mortgage, is that just going through the banks, or is that something mortgage brokers and creative lenders would be willing to do, knowing that you're going to pay it off in a quarter of the time, regardless of?
You're going to pay it off in a quarter of the time. I don't even try to explain it to them because they don't care about that. They're not going to understand it. If you try to explain it to them, they haven't been through the course. They're not going to know. They're not going to understand what you're talking about. They're probably going to be like Blaine's lawyer that's like, wait, I don't really know, and start warning you about everything because they don't know the full picture of what you're actually trying to do, and you don't really know how to explain it yet. So what I would do is say, look, if you want to do a 30-year term, you can do that through a mortgage broker, or you can do it through a bank. A broker will find you the best deal. Because they can shop it around, and they're pulling your credit once. If you go to several different banks, they're going to pull your credit every single time, and it's a hard hit.
And it's a hard pull?
It's a hard pull, and it does affect your credit in a negative way.
Now, my last question, if you wouldn't mind, with a 30-year mortgage, if say using that as the same example, is there a minimum amount of deposit required? Or it could be any creative thing you come up with?
The mortgage broker to work with you on that. But I mean, typically you can still put 5% down. It just depends on the offers and the deals that they're offering at that time, because that always changes. So I couldn't really answer that question.
No problem. Just thought I'd ask.
On a 30-year term, right? Actually, like 10 years ago, they even had 40-year terms for a while.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they were trying to give all people all kinds of reasons to go get a mortgage. And then they sold them all off as subprime mortgages and made a ton of money on us.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay, John, go ahead, and then we'll get back to these other questions because we've only hit 1 of 6 so far here.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Candi. I had sent an email last week about the the amortization. I don't know if you got it or not. But
Go ahead, though. Go ahead.
yeah, it has to do with the resetting, right? And I have a couple of mortgages now on rentals that they started at 25 year, they're down to 23.
Yep.
Is it worth doing a reset just for 2 years in, or?
Oh, are they up for renewal?
Yeah, they are.
They're up for renewal. Okay, you know what? Every single time you extend it back out, again, you have to look at the cost and are you going to have
Right.
to qualify? And you have to be okay with either of those, first of all. Second
Okay.
is it worth it is the question. And so what you would have to do is, well, what would be the difference between the payments that you could put towards the principal every month and
Okay.
compare that to the cost of renewing? So maybe not if it's only 2 years, but it's a possibility that it might be, because even if you were ahead $5,000, it's $5,000 that you're not paying interest on.
Right.
So
Okay.
it is up to you, but you have to run the numbers on that to see whether it makes sense.
Okay. Good.
I apologize if I didn't get to yours. I'm wondering if it's because I thought it was a personal one that we had to talk to face to face. There's a
Oh,
possibility that I might have been waiting to talk to you personally, thinking it was
okay.
a private conversation.
All right. Okay. Thanks. That's great.
No problem, no problem. Okay, so let's go to the next one. When we renew the mortgage, is there anything that we should be aware of? Anything that will prevent the bank renew our mortgages? Well, basically, if you're requalifying, you have to have the ability to be able to requalify. What I would say to the bank though is, I'd like to try to requalify to see if I do, and if not, then I will renew at the terms that you're offering me right now, and make sure that they're okay with that. Okay, so that you're not slamming a door and saying, this is what I want to do. Because then if you don't qualify, now the mortgage is due on, like it's due. So you want to make sure that you haven't done that, that you're going to say, well, I'm still okay with the idea of renewing it, but first I'd like to see if I qualify to go with 30 years, because I would prefer to, and this is usually what I say, with people, is that if it was me, and I don't have to do this because I set myself up so I don't have to do this. I've only ever qualified for 3 mortgages. 2 of them were my primary residence. Just saying, okay, out of all the hundreds of properties I've bought, that's all I've ever done. So, but if you're renewing, what I would say is, oh, where was I going to go with that? Oh, shoot, I hate that. I started to think of 2 things at once and then lost one. I know, just went. So if you're sitting down to renew, the question was, let me go back to the question. Is there anything to be aware of? Okay, if you're renewing, you want to just make sure that, again, that you're not shutting the door on one and that you can qualify for the other. In the event that you can't qualify, you want to keep that door open. I don't remember. I thought I could talk my way back to remembering what the other thing was. Dang, maybe it'll come to me afterwards. But yeah, you just want to make sure that you can make sure that you don't shut the door on the one. I know what it was. So sometimes people will say, well, if you do that, you're looking at 30 years, you're down to 25. Why would you go out to 30? It's going to take you longer. And they'll try to convince you of why it's not in your best interest to do that. They don't understand that you're going to take that difference in the payments and put it to the principal. And if you try to explain that to them, they're not going to get it, because they're trained by the banks to not think of anything else but to put the numbers into the screen. They don't even know how to use an amortization calculator. They are not trained on how to use one of these. I have actually sat down with bankers and said, hey, can you just please have a look at this, because the payments that you're charging me are wrong. And I've actually been able to get money back from them at an interest rate return, because they were overcharging. But the people in the branch, these mortgage specialists, had no idea how to use an amortization calculator. Just saying, they're trained to put in the numbers in the spaces that are on the screen, and that's it. Okay. So if you try to explain to them, they're not going to get it. It's going to go right over their head like a fart in church. So what I would say is that just understand that if you're going to do this, you need to run the numbers, and you just need to say to them, you know what, I get what you're saying and I appreciate your concern, but I just want to make sure that I'm comfortable with the payment. Not that I can't afford the higher payment, because I still want to continue to make these extra payments, but just in case with these crazy times that we're in, I would like to make sure that I have a lower payment in the event that I need it. That's all you got to say, if they're really going to push you. But ultimately, it isn't their business. If you qualify, you qualify. All right. Okay. Next one is, What is the sweet spot for fishing formula in terms of property value and type? In brackets, it says single family duplex, triplex apartment building. Is there a certain type of property or value of the property that fishing formula works best? For example, fishing formula works better on single family home compared to a duplex, triplex, or apartment. I have used the fishing formula to buy single family houses, duplexes, apartment buildings, land, mountains. I've done commercial, I've done residential, I've done multifamily, I've done single family and multifamily new builds. I've used it for just about everything. Okay, I've even used it on cars. So there's your answer for that one. Yes, mountains, definitely, Blaine. I bought 2 mountains. If you've been to a lake, to a Soyuz in DC, and you are in the lake and you look west, the 2 mountain ranges, I bought those, fishing them. No money down, 0% financing, because I added the interest into the, and it was an owner, a family that had owned it in their family for forever, never, like a century. So there was no taxes to them. Just saying. Okay. There's lots of different ways that you can use this. Okay. Can we systemize the whole fishing formula business model and put it into autopilot? Yes. Once you understand all this, you can definitely do that, and you will be shown how to do that. Let's assume a person works reasonably hard and smart. I know it's difficult to qualify. I just want to know a rough number. If he works full-time on average, how many deals can he do? So let me just say to you this way: once you've learned it and you've done a couple, you've got you understand it. Okay. You just need to do a couple, get them under your belt. The first one's the toughest one. Even if you've been a real estate investor before, and the first time you do one of these, the first one is always the most difficult because it's new, right? It's like anything else. What was it like the first time you did anything that freaked you out, like driving a car, riding a motorcycle, skydiving, like anything that was a little bit on the edge? What was it like the first time you did something new like that, right? It freaked the heck out of you, right? So I would say even riding a bicycle for the first time, or skateboarding or longboarding or whatever, my son would go, it's not a skateboard, it's a longboard. Things like anytime you try something new, there's going to be a little bit of stress, right? And then when you do it afterwards, you're like, that was easy, right? You want that button. That was easy. And it wasn't so bad. It was all in your head. Exactly.
Can I do that? Listen.
That was easy.
There you go. All right. So here's the thing. I used to have one of those on my office on the boardroom table. When my employees used to do that all the time. I finally took it and threw it out. It's like, that's gone, enough, because they would do it all the time. But it's true. The first or second time you do something, it's a little bit overwhelming. It's kind of freaky. It's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm really doing this. What the hell was I thinking? I'm here in the middle of this now. I got to keep going forward, right? And then you do it and you're like, holy cow, that wasn't so bad. I can do this. You guys have bought your own homes. Most of you, you've at least owned your own home. Was that difficult? It might have been some, steps to go through, a little bit of jumping through hoops. There might have been a bit of pain here and there, depending on how you were dealing with certain things. But overall, you did it, right? So now you're all good. What about first time you ever tried a new job and you had to go through training and you're overwhelmed and there's all these people you didn't know, right? And then after you got trained, now it's like, you're training other people, and, it wasn't so scary after all. It's like anything else. So reality of how many can you do? Well, you can automate so much of it, because once you got your marketing going, you're bringing in and you're screening people, and you just keep a tally of list of people that are ready to go. And then you're looking for sellers to facilitate those people. So it's a duplicatable system. Once you've got people that have been screened for your tenants, you now can start facilitating those people, and you can keep that marketing coming in. You don't have to turn it off until you have too many people. Then you shut it off, which is what I usually end up having to do, because I only want to do so many deals. But I did hundreds of deals my first, decade in the business, hundreds. So I did 34 deals my first year in the business. Okay. By the time I've been in the business, just over 2 years, I'd done over 200 deals. So, how many can you do? I would suggest you're probably not going to do that. I'm one of those people that's obsessive sometimes on some things, especially once I get something, I want to perfect it and do it more and more. So I would say once you've got it down, one every 2 months is definitely doable on an easygoing, not even full-time job. If you're just doing it part-time, you could do one every 2 months and not be overwhelmed. Okay, so that's 6 in a year. If you were doing it full-time as a full-time job, you could definitely do and organize and facilitate at least one a month and not be overwhelmed full-time. And you're not working full-time, but I mean, if you weren't working a job and this was your full-time thing. So if you did one a month and this was your full-time job, that's 12 in a year. So do the math on that. You can decide, but definitely comfortably without feeling like overwhelmed. And you've already done a couple of deals, so you know the process. You could do one every other month for sure. Okay. Just depends on what your original goals were at the beginning and how fast you want to accomplish the retirement side of things. Obviously, the more you do, the more you're paying off those retirement properties, build that net worth and increasing that income. Once you get to the point where those are paid off and you've got enough of them and you think, okay, well, they're done. I'm good to go now. You might decide that that's it. You know, so you might want to ramp it up at the very beginning and do one a month so that you can retire faster. Okay, it just depends on what your goals are. Are you looking more to have, you know, do it every other month and have more lifestyle and free time? Or you're like, nope, you know, head down, you know, grind it all out, get it done and get myself retired in a much shorter period of time. It's totally up to you. Okay. All right, let's move on. Let's assume my financial goal is to make $100,000 a month in passive income. Does it mean I'm going for apartment building, produce better results? So here's the thing. With an apartment building, you can do that, but you're not really fishing it the same way because unless you're condominiumizing it and separating the titles and selling off the units to the people that are living there as owner occupants, you can do that. And I have done that as well, where I bought an apartment building, it wasn't condominiumized. I condominiumized it, separated the titles. That's what that means, so that I could sell each unit to separate owners. And then you've got to set up a condo board and stuff like that, though, just so you're aware of that. You can do it though with townhouses and you can separate the titles. And I've done that as well. And you don't have to have a condo board in that case. They're responsible for their own property and their own frontage and backyard. Or you can do a strata like a condo where it's like they pay a minimal amount for street and road maintenance or whatever. There's a couple of combinations, but once you get into that and you've got condo boards or stratas, then you've got to follow the regulations for the province that you're in for that. And it becomes a little bit more work and a little bit more, you have to deal with a few more things. For me, I just don't like the hassle. I've done it. I've learned that I don't want to do it anymore. That's for me. Okay. Doesn't mean you don't want to. It just means I'm too damn lazy to do it and I don't like the headaches. Okay. All right, next one. Let's assume that I can control my spending. Does it mean that the more credit cards and the more credit limits I have, the better position myself in applying phishing formula? Well, it depends on how much debt you have to begin with and how much balance transfers you need. And are you going to be that person that qualifies for properties? You might fish some and you might want to qualify for some. Just because you don't have to qualify doesn't mean that you don't want to qualify. Just letting you know, I'm teaching you how to buy property without needing money or having to qualify. It doesn't mean you don't ever want to. You just decide for yourself. Every now and then I might use money to secure a property, but that's very, very rare. And I always know that it's going to be replaced by a tenant buyer. But typically I won't use any of my money ever unless I'm securing a property, but I won't put my money in to leave in a property. I've learned I don't ever have to do that. And it's a game for me to not do that. So, but you have to decide. Some people are like, you know what? No, I'm fine with that. So it's a personal choice. I'm teaching you how to do this business so that if you don't have money and you don't have the ability to qualify, you can still do the business. But you may get to a point where you think, it's just easier if I just put the money down and get started and go, right? You might decide to do that because you know you're going to get it back out, or you might qualify for a mortgage here and there. Or you might do joint venture partnerships where you keep buying the properties because you don't want to deal with, talking to a seller about that. I have found I enjoy working with sellers and showing them how they can do better working with me than to go the traditional route. And for me, I love that part of it. I love showing people how they can actually keep their money in their pocket and not lose their equity. That's something I truly enjoy. So I'm not going to qualify for a mortgage then. Okay, so but that's for me. So that was that one. We covered a lot of ground there. Now, one other one that came up here, I wanted to cover. So Candi, I've been digging into the issue of land transfer taxes. I'm having a difficult time seeing the solution based on my understanding of what you said. I completely understand you do not want to blur the lines between offering legal advice. However, is there a way we can dive or have a deeper discussion so I can better understand what you have successfully executed? My concern is that if I don't have a firm understanding, I will not have the ability to influence the proper document wording and to guide my legal and accounting team appropriately. So what they're talking about is when I moved to BC, I've done most of, not all of it, but I've done a lot of most of my business in Alberta. Having said that, I've bought properties in other provinces prior to when they were doing land transfer fees. And I've also done stuff in the US where I didn't have land transfer fees, and same with the Dominican Republic. I've owned a resort down there, actually an entire beach with the resort and another huge piece of property that I sold off that is now what is called Ocean World down there. It's a board of entrance, and that sale paid off the rest of my property that I had in the resort, plus 2 apartment buildings and 4 villas with swimming pools overseeing the ocean. So it was a smoking good deal. I got into it with no money. So I've fished that property. I've done all these things. So, but when I decided to start buying some property a little bit more out here in BC, because my son wanted to buy property out here, the one thing that we ran was dealing with a lawyer. And I think I've shared this with you guys just recently. He wrote up a contract that was so incredibly convoluted and ridiculous, and they had copy pasted it. They literally had somebody else's name and a different property address in there mixed with my offer. Like, it was like, what were you guys drinking when you wrote this? Like what, right? Like, it was so whacked out. Anyways, so that's a legal term, by the way, whacked out. It was just a mess. So what I ended up doing was thinking, okay, and then all of a sudden, then the land transfer fees, and I'm like, wait, what? Oh, right, you guys have land transfer fees for everything, including vehicles and everything. By the way, what I'm doing tomorrow, my son's car died, and I'm literally going to Alberta to buy a car. I'm buying myself a new vehicle and giving him the one that I have right now. So anyways, that's what's going on, because his died like right now and he can't even get to work. So I'm not buying it here because there's a transfer for a vehicle transfer fee. And I'm like, seriously, on everything? Like, you guys, let's stop buying in BC if you're going to do it that way. But anyway, so, and Ontario is the same way. You've got transfer fees on some of the other provinces. You have to just pay attention. So what I did is I came up with a simple thing. I sat down with the seller and said, look, this is what I want to do. This was on my son's property that he bought. This is the first one we did this on, and it worked. So I said to him, I said, this is crazy. This is the contract that the lawyer wrote. And he laughed because I showed him, like, there's different names, there's different, I said, I am not going to use this, obviously, but let's have a look at this so that you can see why. And he was thinking, this is the most ridiculous thing he's ever seen. So I said, well, here's what my solution is to just deal with this. I said, why don't we just do an option to purchase? I will pay down the option price, and I will pay, which is essentially going to be the equity in it. And we will pay off we'll be responsible for any hard costs you have, which is the underlying mortgage and taxes. And at the end of the term of the option, when we're allowed to exercise the option to purchase this property, which I think on the first one was 5 years because it was such a low amount. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's 5 years. And we'll have it paid off probably within 2. So with that one, what we did is we set up, we have the option to purchase the property for the balance of the mortgage, or the balance of whatever's left over on the mortgage at the time of exercising the option. Okay. So in that case, if we pay off that mortgage within 2 years or within the 5 years that we have, that means we're essentially buying it for whatever the option amount was. So whatever equity he had into the property that he was selling it to us for, right? So that's it. So that's how we got around it. So we'll pay the transfer at that time. We will pay land transfer fees because it will have to be paid, but we don't have to pay it now. Okay, so they will be paid, but just not now. And so I have an option to purchase it. It's being registered on the title of that property to secure my position, but I don't have to pay land transfer fees because I have the option to buy it, but not the obligation to buy it. That's the difference. It's structured differently. It's not a right to purchase. It's the opportunity to purchase. I have the option to purchase. I am not bound to purchase it. That's the difference. It hasn't been sold. Okay, that's the clarity right there. Hopefully that makes a difference for you. I'm not going to say whose this was because I don't know if they want me to or not, but I just thought that was a great question to end up clarifying that for you. So let me just see here. Draft the option to purchase agreement. So drafting the option to purchase. So I have an option to purchase it, yes, with the value of the balance of the mortgage and the option fees paid at the time of the buyout. So no, the option, well, there's no option fees. My option to purchase it, I pay for the option. My option is typically $1, but if there's equity over and above, like say, for example, they have, let's say, for example, it's a $500,000 house. I always use that number. And there was a $400,000 underlying mortgage. There's $100,000 in equity. So I would still have to pay that $100,000, right? Somehow, however, I have agreed with them on a way to pay that down, whether I pay it in one lump sum or I make payments on that, or however that looks, that does have to be paid, the $100,000. And over the years, I've paid on that $400,000 mortgage hard costs. So I would have to buy that property for the balance of the mortgage plus the cost of the option. But my option is to buy it for the balance of the mortgage because the option contract cost me $100,000. So I've paid $100,000 for the option, and I may finance that option contract, whatever that looks like. We'll get into the details of that when we get into contracts. So there are different ways to buy an option. MJ, relax. She's like, holy shit. No, don't worry about it. Okay, there's only 3 contracts.
No, I was yawning. I'm sorry.
Okay. You were like, oh my God, am I gonna get this?
Nope.
You will understand. Don't worry about it. Okay. But yes, okay. So here's the thing. You have an option contract, you will have a rental agreement with the tenant, and you will have a purchase agreement, whether it's with you buying or with somebody buying from you. Okay. In this case, we had those 3 with my son buying the property. Same with the house that I bought here. So there's an option contract, and we financed the option contract itself. So it had payments on it. And then we paid the underlying mortgage hard costs as my son renting until he's exercised the option to purchase the property. So he's paying those hard costs, and he will have, there's no penalty for paying it off early either. Unless there's a penalty to the mortgage, underlying mortgage, we would pay that. Okay. So if the seller has any underlying payout penalties for paying it out early, we will pay that. That you definitely want to make sure you cover for somebody. You don't want them to have to pay any penalty. That's not right. So we would pay off any early. We will pay the hard cost. And so whatever the balance is of the mortgage at the time of exercising our option, that's what we buy the property for. As far as the option contract, we're financing that option contract. It's not the purchase price. It's an option to purchase it, but it's for the equity of that person. Okay, you might have to listen to this a couple of times. So make sure you mark the date of this down, that this is when we talked about this. If you want to go back and listen to it again after you've gone through that lesson a couple of times, it'll be a lot more clear. And I always tell people the first time around, sometimes even the second time around in the program, this is why it's really important to go through it at least twice, right? And this is why I offer the opportunity to have a lifetime in here, because the more you hear it, the more it makes sense. And the more you actually do the deals each time, you'll get better and better at it. And it just is going to make so much sense. And you're going to go, oh my gosh, this is the easiest way to do real estate when you once you get it. Okay. You're not dealing with joint venture partners if you don't want to. You don't have to try and raise money to do your deals. You're not trying to convince somebody that you know what you're doing when you don't. Okay. Just saying, once you get this, you get to do this as often as you want to with nobody saying you can't do more. So just relax. Don't worry about it. You will understand this. It's going to be clear like milk at first. It gets clearer like apple juice after a while, and eventually crystal clear. You'll get it. Okay. So Tim has a question, and then we're going to wrap up for the night. Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you about when you buy or put your option contract on a property, and you offer the option contract to a tenant buyer. The land transfer tax, I've read, but I haven't been able to confirm this, that if you have a simultaneous close between you and your seller and you and your buyer, that there's no double hit of the land transfer taxes, that only your buyer pays for it.
I've heard that too. And that's, yes, that's when you have two people in place. So
yeah.
Typically, if, say, for example, if we were to do one step at a time, if I were to buy a property from somebody, I would pay land transfer fees. And then when I sold it to somebody else, they would pay land transfer fees, right? So the double hit the government gets, right? But if you are buying and selling at the same time and doing what's called a simultaneous close or skip transfer, sometimes what it's called, then quite often what happens is, and my understanding is, and again, I haven't closed on these properties, but my understanding is the same as Tim, is that there's only one land transfer fee because it skips over you and goes directly to the one person who's buying it at the end of the day. Okay. So that's my understanding as well. Now, when I go to do this in a couple of years, could the rules be different by then? Possibly, but my understanding is also it's retroactive to when my contracts were written, when the agreement started, not when I closed. But that could also change too. So they change the rules and regulations on a regular. So you just have to be up on what's going on. Okay. But
Just don't vote Liberal.
What's that?
Just don't vote Liberal and we'll be okay.
There you go. Politics out of that. I'm sure most people, if you know me, you know what I think. But anyways, because I'm pretty shy though. I don't know if you guys noticed, I don't really say my opinion on much, but
Oh yeah.
I know. All right, everybody, I'm going to kick you all out and go to bed because I'm getting up early. Does anybody have any last minute questions? So before I do,
I just have a comment here. The big nugget on tonight's call was everything was awesome, but at minute 58, Candi, you went over how you negotiate all your deals. So if anybody ever had the questions, well, how do I do this? Come back to this recording. I made a note. It's about minute 58 for about 20 minutes to 30 minutes. Candi goes over how she negotiates it, how she sits down, how she presents it, like step by step. So basically connect the dots of how to get a fishing deal.
Hey, everybody, thanks to Heath for that one, right? Awesome.
Guys, it's big nugget. That's huge.
Yeah, sometimes I don't think to say, hey, you know what, pay attention here. I just share. So yeah, make sure you take those notes. Thanks for that, Heath. That's awesome. He's really good at that. He does that quite often. He'll say to you guys, do you realize what she just said tonight? Do you realize what you just got? Because the one night I actually sat here and read out my entire contract for you word for word, because I'm not allowed to give it to you, but I can share what I've written. Okay. So that's that. We'll do it again. Don't worry.
Like that'll convert a lot of no's into yeses.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Yes.
Big time. Big time.
Yeah. All right, then, everybody, have a good night, and we will see you tomorrow night at the same time on Zoom. I won't be in the same place, but I will be here on Zoom for you. Okay, and we're going to do a reduction tomorrow.
Thanks, Candi.
You're welcome,
Thank
hon.
you. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good
Thank
night.
you
guys.
very
Good
much.
night, everybody.
Thank you.
Good
Good night.
Bye.
I'll be up all night,
Good
Candy,
night.
reviewing this.
Good night, all.
Bye.
Drive safe.
Thank you. I will. Bye-bye.